All right, welcome to the Scituate Board of Health, Wednesday, October 14th, in the Selectmen's Chambers of Town Hall, 6 p.m. I'll take a motion to open the meeting.
Motion to open the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, before we get started, first thing I ask, loudly and clearly, state your names, so everything's on record and we can hear everything.
Sure.
First thing on our agenda tonight, discuss vote with Niche Engineering, Scituate Public Safety Building Septic System variance hearing.
Hello.
You guys are up.
Okay. Sit, stand, what do you prefer?
It doesn't matter, you can bring that, over here if you like. We're actually going to pull these plans up.
Okay. Hello, for the record, Stephen Ventresca with Niche Engineering. With me is Alan Brown from Dorr and Whittier. Okay. I guess first it would be helpful to have, I think, Alan to do just a general overview of the project.
Would be,
yeah,
would be
just
great place to start, please, gentlemen.
Yeah. So
so
I'll
Alan
stand up to it just to make, if it's better. So basically, as you know, this is a public safety project for the town of Scituate. And essentially, it's a satellite station for a fire station, but it's primarily the police station and an EOC for the community and for the police and fire to be used. And that's basically just to show you this location here. So, and basically, it's one big building. We have secure parking in the back with public on the side, so this is going to be used for that community room. And I know you guys are really thinking about septic. So primarily the septic, just so you know, is over here. So it's across the street from that lot, okay? The reason for that is we did a bunch of tests here, and the water table was very high.
Right.
So it just wouldn't perk, basically. That was in the spring we did the test, and it was after a really tough winter, and that was probably the worst case we'll ever see it. However, we could make it perk. So we basically, the town owns this property as well.
Correct.
And so basically, we found out, we did some tests over here, and this worked out beautifully over here. So basically, it's a forced main system. I don't want to get in the technical parts.
That's right. Go until you get into trouble. I'll
Good.
pull you back.
I'm just an architect. It's a forced main system from here over to here just to get the septic out of off the site. So again, then it gets all treated over there on site. It's a two-story building. Mostly offices on the top, but on the bottom is primarily bunks, storms, kitchen. The police have their detention center over here, so that's where your wonderful guests go when they're misbehaving. We do have a sound report through here, and we have a apparatus bed here. So that's a really quick, I'm not sure what you're looking for in this case, but I know that we got a lot of public meetings trying to introduce the project, but that's my Reader's Digest version of it.
And that's all we need, thank you.
Okay, good.
As Alan mentioned, we have the septic field, which is over here across the street from Manlot Road. And so this parcel, obviously the street layout, and then this is all town-owned, so same ownership, which I know was a discussion point at one point. But to start back at the building, we have 2 septic tanks and a 4,000-gallon pump chamber. And essentially, as Alan said, that gets pumped up through the force main along the layout of Manlot Road and then across into the parcel, where it is then pumped into the distribution box, and then it's fed via gravity into the rest of the laterals. There's about 13 outlets at the distribution box, and the laterals are sloped to 0.5% away from the distribution box down this way, so that the effluent will flow into the field. Nice sand here. That's why we moved the lot over here. My understanding is that there are also plans previously that had a septic field over here, and so we were continuing that.
When they were thinking about putting a school over there, up in that property at one point, I think that's where it came from.
I think initially the thought was to put the septic field over here, where we're now proposing the emergency landing zone for med flights. But again, as Alan had mentioned, high groundwater, poor soils, so we moved the field over here. Back to the tanks, one of the requests that we have tonight is a request for a variance because the outlets to the tanks are within the estimated seasonal high groundwater. 2 things. The outlet pipe, the force main, that will have a rubber boot, and that's integrated into the boot is integrated into the septic tank, so it forms a seal so that the effluent can't get out and any water can't get in. In addition, we have under drains within the parking lot, here, here, and here, and those would route any water that does come up, then we take it away, so that would lower that water table within
So
that
any
vicinity.
groundwater coming
Any
up?
groundwater coming up that would intersect. And so again, I'm going to flip this and we'll get into the profile of the system. So we have our 4,000 gallon septic tank, 2,000 tank, and then our 4,000 gallon pump chamber. We have a 4-inch SDR 21 force main, as I stated before, that gets pumped up into the field here. I know there's a question about the volumes that are going through the force main versus what's getting into the field, and why the force main is pitched the way it is. So this is designed for Title V. Title V wants you to have pitch back into the pump chamber. I know there's a question about can we pitch it the other way. If we did, then we'd be getting into groundwater because we need to have a 5-foot offset at this point because of the fast perk rate that we had here because we're in a zone 2. So that's why we have this positive pitch back. And the pumps are designed to pump over what I think it's 385 gallons that's dosed here and approximately 400, I'm going to say 425, that's within the pipe itself. So the pump is designed for that flow. So when the pump turns off, obviously the effluent in the D-box gets finished going into the field and then the rest of it is drained back into the tank, waiting for the next dose. So again, the pumps are designed for that type of flow and that type of volume. So just talk about the pumping up to the D-box by gravity. As you know, that's allowed under Title V for systems under 2,000 gallons per day. This system we estimated is conservatively about 1,500 gallons, and then we said with a maximum use would be about 1,800 gallons per day. So we rounded up to 1,900 gallons. So our thinking is that we're being conservative with our design, and discussions that I've had with another engineer in the office, he has designed at least 20 of these systems over the past 20, 30 years, and he hasn't had an issue with them in the past. So he's confident about this design that we've proposed here. And he's done them in other places throughout Eastern Mass. It is a long distance. That is pumped at 132 gallons per minute, over 5-6 minutes, so you should have good pressure, pushing that effluent out.
Right. And the gravity's going to take it at the top.
I'm sorry?
The gravity's going to take it at the top.
Yeah, correct. That's correct. Is there any other questions that you
Now, on the
have?
3 tanks there, they're that way, but on this, it just shows them, just so you know what size tanks.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So they're not that way.
They're not that way, that's just how for the profile for schematics.
So, I guess the pressing question is, because it's new construction, why should we have to request a variance and grant a variance?
So because it's new construction, and so I think that it would be a hardship if we were not granted the variance. I'm not sure how we'd be able to construct the septic tanks and the septic field, frankly. I'm not sure where we would put the tanks. If this is where the building needs to be sited, installation of the tanks would be very difficult.
So let me follow up by asking a question. So my understanding is you need a minimum of 1% slope from building foundation to the tank.
Correct.
And then you need an additional 1% slope
Between tanks.
Right.
And so yep.
So basically, are you saying that the location of the tanks or the depth of the tanks cannot be raised?
Correct.
Because of the elevation of the building itself?
That is correct. So the building would have to that's an excellent point. The building would have to be much higher for us to be out of that estimated seasonal high ground.
Right. Therein lies the 3 inches.
Right, so it's a reduction from, I think, 12 inches to 9 inches.
To
3 inches, right. 3 inches is what we're talking about.
So is the pump tank, is that the one that's holding everything? Is that the one that's
Well-
critical? Is that the one you're asking for the variance for?
We're actually asking for, it would be this one because this is the outlet pipe, and that's 11577.
So that's
And the groundwater's,
closest one right here.
yeah.
Then if you raise the building up, you can't raise it up 3 inches?
Raising the building up would then create a domino effect around the rest of the site. Increasing fill changes the parking lot slope. And then you're getting into redesign, storm drainage. So once you start that,
But it could be done, right?
anything could be done.
Yeah.
A lot of the site design is based on program, meeting the needs of police and fire. I mean, it looks like it's got plenty of room in that site, but it actually, every little square inch we've looked at very, very closely. And remember, 1 inch is a wetland, the one at Manlot, and 3A is a wetland, so you can't use that part. We've had to move out of that even more, but those parking lots are pretty much bare minimum for parking for this facility. So we needed to have a building off from the roads as well for visibility and all that stuff. So in other words, the site is very tight, even though it looks like there's lots of room, 6 acres. When it comes down to it, it got pretty tight once we had to get everything on that, so.
So if a variance were granted, how would the design be just as protective for environmental safety? In other words, effluent out, stormwater in. And you started to describe, how the seals would be on the inlets, and then does it change buoyancy or any of those things?
I mean, the 3 inches would have changed buoyancy. I mean, so it would be minimal change, but yes, it would change the buoyancy. We would still use the rubber boot as I described. We would still use that on our system. I think that's a standard design that we do these days.
How did you determine high groundwater?
I believe it was determined by the French method and also by observations within the test pits that were done. So I have to say I'm not the designer of the septic system. That gentleman is out on paternity leave.
It's probably, do you know the dates we did the perk test?
Yeah, there were perk tests done. The perk tests were done late spring, early summer on that side. And
May 8th, 2000.
and it should be, at the bottom, it should
Printer.
identify.
Does it show any modeling on there or anything? I mean,
It doesn't on these test pits, it doesn't show it here.
yeah.
So the printer shows it at 115.35 and
115.35, correct.
and so our outlet is 115.77, I think.
That just says estimated.
It's not estimated.
So test pit 1, can you can you identify where test pit 1 is?
So test pit one right here.
Standing water in the hole is at 126 inches, so just over 10 feet.
Oh, I'm sorry. So those test pits that we're looking at are not the same as the test pits. I apologize. The numbering is the same, but these are different test pits. So we're actually looking at test pits 4, 5, and 3, which I have here. I apologize.
I mean, whatever test pit's closest to those,
To the tanks. So that would be 5.
3 and 5.
Yep.
3, 5, 6.
Steve, which parcel, which packet are you in? Okay, Northwest parcel, got it. Thank you. Yep.
So test pit 3 here, I'll show you. So 22 inches down.
So 2 feet down, just about 2 feet down.
2 feet down is what,
From
where they,
existing grade, so that would be approximately elevation.
22 to 42 inches plus or minus. Sandy Loam, that's a
So it says here the elevation is 119.71, so 2 feet down is 117.71,
Right.
approximately.
11771. And what's the,
Below the existing grade when the test pit was dug.
yeah.
And so our outlet is at 115, 77.
Right.
So in that
The outlet's
case, you have plenty of room.
115.77.
So yeah, so these test pits refer to those test pits there.
Depth of weeping on that parcel, so observed groundwater in the spring, because I was there, it was exceptionally high, 18 to 22 inches was typical
Okay.
water in the hole on that parcel.
On
the
3
building.
and 5.
Yes, on the building parcel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
18 inches.
Which is
down.
why, a good portion of that parcel, when the test pits were dug, could not park.
Right.
So now I'm confused. If there was weeping at 18 inches, then I think your profile had it down 2 feet, didn't it?
The profile.
Right there. Are those about 2 feet below grade? Oh, that would,
You're talking about over here?
yeah.
Yeah.
But that doesn't show existing grade.
It doesn't, I was just gonna say, it doesn't show existing grade. So if you look at test pit 3, it's around 119, and so right now our finished grade here will be about 121. So 2 feet higher than that. So we're about 4 feet above groundwater in this case, at finished grade.
Finished grade would be raising.
Is going up,
is going
right?
up.
Right.
Just trying to think of test pit, if they change a little bit, and you can lose that 3 inches. The problem I have is it's tough to grant a variance for anybody, because we never do on new construction. And it doesn't matter if it's, to me, my own personal opinion, whether it's John Smith or the town of Scituate. And understandably, it's, they heard the argument, that's gonna cost me money. Well, it's, a lot of times it's costed the homeowner money. So why should the town be treated any different? And I hate to say that, I kind of representing the town, but you gotta be fair when you look at something like that. I mean, it's
Not to the
both
mention,
sides. You can't,
Yep.
not to mention the fact that, if we do this, it just opens a can of worms down the line. When I have a homeowner sitting here and they say, they're watching on TV right now, and they say, well, I need to do this, blah, 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 blah. Well, you did it for the town, you can't do it for me.
Right.
And that is...
It's unfair.
That's an explosion waiting to happen.
Yeah.
So, where do we go from here?
Yeah, and that's the, it's...
Where do we go from here?
Yeah,
You know,
that
I
was
could,
my
I
question
could
back
see an
to you.
argument if one of the test pits had weeping high and you're basing it on that. The Frimpter method, I know there's probably ways to manipulate that, one way or the other, to interpret it, because it's not actually saying, where you see weeping, that's evidence right there, no matter where the modeling is. If it's weeping at a certain elevation, it's weeping there. There's nothing you can do about it. They have it a foot higher for a reason. Rubber boot fails, water gets in there, now you're pumping everything up to that field, and the field's gonna fail, and then we're back to this, again, of redesigning.
Right.
When we could have fixed it right before we even broke ground. There may never be a problem, this might all be a new conversation, but I gotta think of the worst-case scenario.
You're right.
What happens if there is a problem, and we're all looking at each other 5 years from now going, boy, we could have, we should have.
We are designing to Title V. I mean, we are designing to what we need to design to. These systems are, as you know,
With the exception
constructed
of
all
the
the time.
variance.
With the acceptance of this
Right.
variance, that's,
Yeah, it's too bad there's no way to raise that tank or put another tank in between another pump chamber that you pump up to and maybe pump again. I don't know if that's something that can be worked, maybe no one
Yeah.
thought of. If there's, like I said, to raise the building up by 3 inches, I understand the restrictions in there are tight, but 3 inches doesn't,
aside from the cost factor, why, if we're moving up and we're not moving left and right and front and back, why is moving the building up 3 inches that much of a...
I'm going to have the civil engineer discuss that, but I think it's going to come down to storm drainage, the way the parking drains, just how the whole surface now drains. I don't know what impact that is, so.
yeah, I mean, like I said before, to me, it becomes a domino issue. You start raising, I understand 3 inches, but you start to raise things and you start to adjust things. You're also looking at ADA compliance with walkways, parking lots,
Correct.
and so things start to shift. So,
They're just going to have to raise everything up.
Of course you
That
do.
means there could be more fill,
Yeah, of
3
course.
inches of fill.
yeah, but how much, I mean, a parking lot can stay the same, so you extend the ramp a little bit.
If you have enough length for the ramp, again, we'd have to look
Right.
at it, so.
Storm drains, I don't see why they would have to change on the parking lot. I mean, the building
But we have a very-
foundation, maybe you gotta go a little deep with the foundation and get to below the frost line, but,
I know we have a very complicated storm drainage system on the site, that's all I can tell you right now, so
Yeah.
that there is a domino with all that, because they've got the certain inverts that cascaded down to certain locations, but, obviously.
but just talking about raising the building, not any of the ground
I
elevation.
understand,
Yeah.
so,
I mean, I can see the entrances to the building, like you said, we have
That might be
handicap to take into
closer.
consideration.
Would the board be open to having pipes coming out of the building flatter than 1%? If we could get-
Still
if we-
asking for variance.
It's a different variance, though.
Now, how far out of the building?
I'm talking about making the pipes out of the building flatter instead of 1%.
Right, but my point is,
How
So-
long?
yeah, but our jurisdiction, I think, starts at 10 feet from the foundation. Now you're talking plumbing inspector.
Right. Yep.
What's
So
the,
I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I can't answer for the plumbing
what's the
inspector.
current slope? So is the current slope at 1% or is the current slope 2%? Because if the current slope would be 2% and it could be revised to 1%, that would speak to what you're recommending and it would not be,
So it looks like we have,
Adverse
it looks like we have,
effect.
it looks like we have 2% right now.
so.
So we could go to 1% and still not, and then not need a variance and potentially raise it 3 inches.
So by reducing the slope from the building to the tank,
Mhm.
that would allow the tank to be raised slightly?
Slightly.
It's too simplistic, but bear with me.
Yep. No, I mean, that's,
Such that the slope of the pipes from the building to the tank would still be Title V, minimum 1%.
mhm.
And you would be potentially or?
Potentially, maybe we get to 3 inches.
Get the 3 inches.
Maybe.
I mean, I hate to pass them like that, but it makes it compliant here, and then this board, it's a no issue as far as I'm concerned. I'm not speaking for my other two
Okay.
board members, but
I mean, I didn't-
now it eliminates the
And so,
variance.
I'll say, I didn't realize that this board had never granted a variance on septic systems.
New construction.
New construction. If this was a repair,
It-
and the conversation wouldn't even be here, it would be granted. It
Okay.
would be, but it's new construction.
Okay.
It's a standard that,
Which will set the precedent, as I said
Mhm.
before, is that there will people that will come in here and sit before
Yep.
us and ask, if you did for the town, you do for me, and that's a slippery slope that no board wants to go down.
Okay.
all the clear conscience anyway, so I sleep very well at night.
And I guess my question would be, if it was granted the 3 inches, I mean, does it solve all the problems, or could we have other problems?
Well, that's what Russell was
Right.
saying, is that no one knows 5 years down the road if the 3 inches is actually going to solve the problem.
Yeah,
Right.
it might be mute, or you might
Right.
get water back in. If the boot fails, it's just, a foot gives you plenty of insurance that the water's not gonna sit in that tank.
Right.
And that's the thing, if the tank sits in water and it leaks, it's gonna pump 24/7 and fail that.
And fail that,
Right.
right, that's just
Yeah.
gonna,
But we also have under drains in the parking lot, so those are going to be there. And those are at least 2 feet, probably more below the pavement. You have to at least get 18 inches below that, and then whatever the pipe, 4 inches. So you're talking 2 feet already as far as dewatering.
So what you're saying is with the added influence of the drainage associated with stormwater, that is in essence to lower the groundwater table consistently, not
Correct.
just for the septic system itself, but for the rest of the
for
necessary
everything, for
design.
everything.
That's
right.
correct.
So it's
But
an
we're not
added.
worried about that, though.
No, I know, I'm just saying,
Yeah, right.
so it's I mean, we've got high groundwater here regardless of the 12 inches. So I'm just saying that's an added protection that
They're dewatering
they're
well below.
dewatering well below.
Right.
So that
I
regardless.
guess I'm skeptical about how you can say it's been, I understand engineering wise, you can say dewatering it, but then now you're changing the groundwater table, so you've adjusted the groundwater table by Frimpter, and you could also say you could adjust the groundwater table by dewatering and lower that whole groundwater table down, and it's a moot point. But you're putting that on your credentials.
Right. So then would that resolve the variance request? Would we not need a variance request?
Well, if the groundwater doesn't exist, then sure.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
don't know how
if
you
we
do
have the
that,
under
though.
drains.
If you have the under drains,
Yeah.
We'd have to
sure,
come back
but
in like 20 years to figure it out.
Probably, probably.
Yeah, I'd have to ask DEP that one, how they would swallow that one. Boy, oh boy, yeah. That would be an interesting,
So where do we stand right now? You want to have them go back to
So it's not, it sounds like,
change the outflow pipe?
it sounds like, so as you and I know, we've been going back and forth. We've had several iterations of this plan already, and we've gotten to this point where we have, the 3 outstanding comments or questions.
Yep.
The ductile iron piping per DPW requirements, the discussion that we were having about pressure distribution as opposed to gravity being fed, and now this one. So does it make sense to go back to the office, see what happens when that slope is revised from 2% to 1%?
Sure.
To see what that does to the tanks, and then you can report back to
If
me.
it is indeed 2% to 1%. Because if it's 1% and they're gonna go to 3/4%, then you're asking a different.
Well, no, based on the plan, it's 2%. So I misspoke originally.
Okay.
I thought it was 1%.
Okay,
So if
So
it's
2%.
so we do
currently,
have a percent to deal with in there, which could conceivably,
Could.
so instead of a pitch here, we got a pitch here, which still would comply with Title V and could potentially
Yeah.
eliminate the
Take care
request
of the
for the
3
variance,
inches, right.
right?
I mean, just shooting from the hip, and it's out of my jurisdiction, but I don't know if you reduce that slope out of our jurisdiction in the building with some sort of an ejector pump to make sure it's getting shot into the tank. I don't know how that
Well,
works.
and that just gets into one tank, and then you have the other tank, and then the pump chamber. So by the time you get
That's
there,
all
you've
stays
lost
the
that
same
head. Yep.
if the grade changes. But you know what I mean? If they have a
Typic-
problem with the low pitch, if you have a way to extract whatever's in the pipe, because I imagine when solids getting clogged up, that's why you have to have a
Yeah.
certain pitch.
Yeah.
But if there's a way
Typically, so typically I've designed pipes at the foundation out to a tank at 1% and haven't had an issue. This is on other school buildings. I haven't had an issue with building inspector.
I would think, because in here, they're not going to be preparing any food, there's not any issues with that, or...
There's some, the firefighters are there 24/7.
Yeah. All right, so
They
All right, yeah,
they
yeah.
have designed a kitchen for the plan.
Fortunately, it's a satellite station, not a full-fledged central fire station, but they'll be cooking in there.
right.
And my
And
understanding
we
is
deem
that
to no grease trap for that, correct?
no grease trap, it's the equivalent, that was one of our
That's-
questions
yep.
and comments through one of the several
Right.
iterations of this plan already, and it's
It's not
based.
commercial.
It's not commercial,
No.
and based on the number of firefighters using that portion of the building at any one shift, it's equivalent to a large family.
Yeah,
Yeah, there are not that many people in there.
Right.
yeah, it would make sense to me. What's the shift, six people, 6 personnel?
Yeah,
Maybe.
4 to 6.
right,
Four to
two
six.
EMTs, plus their admin and chief.
4 to 6, so
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
little bigger than an average home
Okay,
family.
yeah.
So,
Yep.
no, that flies with me, that
Okay.
makes sense.
Thank you. So we have, okay, so the change of the pipe slope, see if we can get 3 inches
To raise,
to raise the tanks. And then the other, about the ductile iron pipe, could you clarify that as far as within the street layout? Is it just crossing the street, or is it actually within the entire layout where the pipe?
So
Travels.
my understanding from DPW is the entire, whether it's the street, the curbing, the shoulder, it's the entire length.
So basically where it leaves the driveway, approximately here, all the way
Yep,
to the layout line there?
that's also my understanding from
Okay.
And how
the
deep is
DPW.
that? Down?
This point it gets to over 3 feet.
I can circle back with the DPW.
If you could clarify that, please.
Clarify, and I can send you an email on that.
Okay.
Um,
And is this something that's done in other parts of town, ductile iron as part of a force main
I'm
And-
told that this is standard requirement for every project.
that crosses within the public right of way? Okay.
have you had different experience?
I've only done Schedule 80 or SDR 21 or Schedule 40, and those have been fine in other towns, so
I can, like I said, I'll circle back.
that would be helpful.
I'll circle
That would
back
be
with them
helpful.
tomorrow, and I can
The
send you an
Schedule
email
80,
to
that would be
confirm.
for heavy load.
Right, and so that's why maybe Schedule 80 more appropriate, or is the DPW fine with that? I'm just thinking ductile iron force main.
I have no problem either way, I think
Seems-
as long as
3 feet
the
down.
town engineer or DPW, whatever they want, I would have to agree with them, but I have no problem. either
Okay,
way.
so if you
Whatever
could
they-
clarify, that would be
I can
helpful.
clarify with
Yeah, she
Mark.
can, yeah.
Okay.
Before we do anything, is there anybody in the audience that wants to chime in about this? You good?
Sounds like you're going to continue it, so
We are going to.
that's a good thing.
Yes. Okay. All right, so,
Make a motion to...
Actually, sorry, before we continue, just the three items, so
Yeah.
the variance, the ductile iron, and the third one
The
was,
third one was again, the back and forth in the plan design about why the dose is not pressure distributed as, currently it's designed for gravity. And
Yep.
you and I had a conversation
Yep.
about it. So the question is, with each dose, obviously the heaviest load is going to be taken by the portion of the field closest to the D box.
Right.
With each dose. So the question is that just as effective for the long term as something that would be pressure dosed through the entire field, pressure distributed through the entire field? Thinking long term in terms of, down the line, progressive failure, is one better than the other? And obviously, we rely on your,
Yeah,
expertise and past experience doing projects like this to design the best.
so I think they're both good designs. We're right at the threshold, as you know, so I think that either design in this case would work well. I think with the gravity flow, I think you'll have more of the mat up front on this portion up here, right by the D box, but I think over time, that effluent will continue to flow down, and then you'll still build up that mat, so as that mat at the front of the pipes starts to build up, again, you get the progression down. I don't think it's any different than what you would get from a pressure distribution, other than the evenness of the mat. I think they're both perfectly acceptable, and as I said, engineer in our office has designed many of these and hasn't had an issue. So I'd like to keep that design if that's acceptable to the board.
all right, so I will take a motion to continue this on based on the changes that we've talked about, contingent on some new plans.
The only question is, I'll make that motion. How much time do you need?
When's your next meeting or hearing?
Is it a weekend?
Yeah, at this point, it's a week and a half. Our Mondays
usually meet on
typically
Monday nights.
Usually on
Oh,
Monday.
usually on Monday nights, so
Yeah.
that would be October 29th, 6th. And when do you need plans by?
She needs them just the Friday before.
Friday before?
Yeah, but we got to know the Thursday before so we can post it.
Right,
Yeah.
we have to post it on the agenda.
So you need to know Wednesday ideally would be the best
Wednesday,
time.
she'd like to see the plans, Thursday the best.
That's a
So it's
week.
a week from today.
And it doesn't matter to me if you want to go another 2 weeks. That's up
Yeah.
to you. It's just asking the question. I want to put you on the...
I'm not in charge. Let's try a week from today, or tomorrow, I should say.
I have to get back to you tomorrow
Yep.
anyway, so we can keep each other,
So we're on the same page and we know
right,
on
we'll keep each
schedule.
other on schedule, and if I haven't heard from you a few days before we're ready to post the next agenda, I'll
Yep.
reach out to you.
Okay,
And then we can make sure that it hits the agenda at the right time.
okay, great.
Yeah, make a motion to continue. And, for a week and a half unless otherwise told different.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice
Appreciate it.
explanation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, next up on the agenda, other business, administrative invoice approvals. Sure, Sue has some stuff for us to sign.
I'm always busy.
Jen, anything you want to squeeze in before we get kicked out?
Nope.
Jen?
Yes.
I like that. It's solid. Nope.
Okey-dokey.
Not even, nope.
All right, so then, as we're signing our names to the POs, we close the meeting.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, good night, thank you very much. Every one of them was Ralph.
He's been a busy guy. Yeah, they said everyone is Ralph.
How many flu vaccines did we get? Flu vaccines did we get?
400 doses?
Yeah, we've had several shipments. She's still waiting for some more.
I think we have 400, we will have 400 doses available when all of the shipments are
When
received.
are we gonna start doing the clinics or the,
October
The-
22nd.
Good call. Our flu clinics,
October.
October 22nd, St. Mary's Parish Center,
11 to 1 and 1 to 2.
11 to 1 and 1 to 2, and DPW posted the flu clinics on the sign outside the transfer station, so that we could advertise at a location where people are most likely to see it.
Take a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.